trust me, okay? 50% of what we call San Francisco was originally sand dune lands. No kidding. 46.2 square miles. You're going to find any grapevines really like growing there. Maybe a little bit of Oregon grape in that, but you can't get that into really a wine. That's a native plant, Oregon grape. I guess you probably could make it into a wine, but it wouldn't make a good one. You're going to be tasting wines made from a particular species of grape, vinifera. It's a very successful species on account of the humanoid love of wine. North Africa, Europe, Central Asia, things like that. You know, there's some grapes indigenous to the United States that'll make a decent wine. I don't really know why nobody in California brings in any grapes from my home state of Ohio to New York State. Catawba grapes, Concord grapes. Oh, there may be somebody who does. I mean, you know, there's 4,000 wineries in California. Guy crossing with his partner there looked like he could use some help from his facial expression. Nothing a good glass of wine wouldn't cure. I got something for you for the rebound. You know, you're all sharp and chipper and perky now. We'll see how you are after that third winery. You may still be sharp and chipper and perky and sober, or sharp and chipper and perky and drunk, or sober and tired, or tired and drunk. Here's an idea. The Cliff Hotel on the left. For the Redwood Room. What about a glass of red wine in the Redwood Room, all paneled, 75 years ago. All just the paneling of one tree. Art Deco details. We got a lot of deco in this city. It comes in different forms. This side, the right, the Alcazar, years and years ago when it was open. It isn't now. I saw Sandra Bernhard in that. Some of you may remember her. She was wild in her day. Maybe Trump bought this building on the left. I don't really know what that guy drinks, Trump, you know. He has a 30% share in the building that everybody calls the Bank of America Tower. Years ago, the Bank of America, when he built it, the Bank of America headquarters. We'll see if we can at least get a silhouette of it in the course of the tour today. But he's got a 30% share in it now. It's a beautiful building, but it was really, my wife is a librarian, for instance, but my favorite library was the wine library in the Carnelian Room that was on the top of the Bank of America Tower. Nations Bank of Charlotte, North Carolina. They bought Bank of America in the late 90s. They liked the name so much that if you go to the headquarters in Charlotte, it says Bank of America on the top. But I guess is whatever it was, maybe them or maybe then the folks that they sold the building to, or gave Trump an interest in something like that. They closed the Carnelian there. They closed my favorite library. I'm going to take a right here on what was the fire line during the time of the 1906 earthquake. Would you blow up the Champs-Élysées? I don't think people would do that in Paris, but we did it here, and we kind of had to. We were forced to. This was the fire line during the time of the 1906 earthquake. It was lined with wooden Victorians and mansions, and I'm not saying internationally, people called it the Champs-Élysées of the United States, but with some of the egos that San Francisco is famous for, people called it that here. But, you know, the part of the city we're coming out of, 99% rate of destruction. That's not an exaggeration. Over 28,000 buildings were lost. I mean, we have all the disasters going on today, and all the fires over the last number of years in California. But still, if you want to measure all the different things you would look at in terms of a disaster, and that, I mean, if you just want to talk about acreage toasted in California, that was it last? It was 2018. The Camp Fire, terrible Camp Fire. There was some, unfortunately, significant loss of life in that too. But that was 302,000 acres. It would have been less than that, significantly less than that in, you know, beginning of the 20th century, San Francisco. But 10,000 deaths, 28,000 buildings lost. I mean, overall, still the worst disaster in California history. As I said to some of you, I mean, it cut California's wine production back by half because there were wineries in the city producing half of California's wine. And California, from the 1860s forward, has been the biggest grape grower and winemaker in the USA. Took over from my state of Ohio in 1860s. Ohio was just on the top briefly. Don't worry, I didn't just move here from Ohio. I didn't just move here from Florida or Boston, other places I've lived. I've been here since, what, 91? Yeah, you know, the ground shakes. We have all kinds of different cracks in the ground in California. The one that moved in a big way in 1906 moved to maybe 7.7 on the Richter scale with an epicenter close by. I say maybe because nobody is ever going to be able to say for sure on the Richter scale because it hadn't been invented yet. And we know what the quake was in '89 that rattled the city. That was 6.9. Yeah, I've lived in California a long time now. I'll probably stay here even with all the cracks in the ground. I think California is a great state. We have our faults. No place is perfect. Can't expect perfection. This is Steakhouse Row. Hey, maybe you saw Ruth's Chris Steakhouse on the left. That's what I call it. I'm going to show you the Meat Museum a little bit up the road from here. I mean, when was the last time you just walked around in San Francisco, maybe on a Friday night at 6 o'clock, glanced over and saw a display case with all kinds of cuts of raw meat in it. It's the Harris Ranch Steakhouse. It also doubles as a butcher shop. And so there's a sidewalk display. I don't know if I detour to see that. I probably also want to eat in the restaurant. I mean, you definitely need a glass of red wine to keep your arteries clean. I'll talk health a little bit. Hey, I just got the results of my last blood test, and my cholesterol was great. You know, I'm just thinking, thank you, Mondavi. Thank you, Robert Mondavi, and thank you, Peter Mondavi. Robert Mondavi, okay, he passed away, you know, quite a while ago now. His brother Pete, younger brother, passed away just recently. Bob lived to 94. Peter Mondavi lived to 101. Robert Mondavi, even in his later years, would drink about a bottle of red wine a day. Peter Mondavi drank a glass of red wine a day. I don't really know if I want to be a centurion. I mean, that might be too much. I'm not going to get greedy. I'm 65 now, but I don't have to live to be 100. You know, I'm thinking maybe 97, right between those two Mondavis. So 2.5 glasses of wine. I mean, that's how I justify it to my wife. It seems reasonable. Peter Mondavi really kind of got his revenge for that sucker punch he received from Robert Mondavi in the early 1960s. It was a bit of a family feud. Bob had leave the rest of the families tutelage to start to make fine wine. California was making cheap wine after Prohibition. There had been kind of a lobotomy on the American palate. Well, we know there's a dip there. Well, I guess if that's going to happen, we'll raise our bus up all the way. We were in the normal position, and that it's not that big of a grade, but I don't want that to happen again. We'll wait till we get off this street. Maybe we're a little low. We'll go way down. We're right in the middle. This is a nice church on the left. These Russian Orthodox priests are much looser than you would think. They wear black robes, and there's JC on the left. They kind of take an inspiration from that hairstyle with those. I mean, they're pretty young dudes, and they're big black beards and braided ponytails. I'm in a group called the San Francisco Tour Guide Guild. There's about 350 of us, and the main thing we do is educate each other. We did a familiarization to a Russian connection in San Francisco. We were in Trinity over there on the left. It was like a Wednesday, 3 in the afternoon, and after the priest showed us around and joked a little bit, he said, "You want to ring the bells?" And we're like, "Really?" "Yeah, sure, go ahead and ring the bells." So you got all these tour guides in the middle of the day ringing the bells. That was fun. No idea what their tastes in wine are, of course. Can't imagine it wouldn't be very good. Yeah, 1920 to 1933 it was basically illegal to import, export, produce, or consume alcoholic beverages. That did a number on the wine industry here. Prohibition was more hated and circumvented in California, especially Northern California, than anywhere else in the USA on account of that. I mean, the mafia could not really establish much of a beachhead here at all, and that the police would give them a one-way ticket back to New York, Chicago, or wherever, because they were kind of doing the work for them, you know. The feds had to and you know, every tour I am going to give an award for fashion statement of the day. And I think you can see who I'm thinking of and why I brought that up right now. I really think the outfit is color coordinated with the hair in front of us on the right. Tasteful. Tasteful. Spirit of San Francisco. Yeah, Spirit of San Francisco. Yeah, so I think our climate control overall is working nicely in your cabin area, but I may have to worry about that when I get a lot of sun in the bus again here in the front. All I can get out of my front blowers is hot air, nothing cold. So, you know, what's the San Francisco response to that? You just take your clothes off. I'm not going to go back, don't worry. Originally, that's the Ohioan in me. I'm a little too culturally conservative for that. Less culturally conservative? Well, maybe you go to Castro, but that could be Castro anywhere. I guess that could be Castroville, where they grow a lot of artichokes, or I don't know, it would be impossible to see somebody in the buff, I guess, walking down one of the streets in Castro Valley, and you're thinking, oh, this guy talking about the Castro district? No. That's not even really officially named the Castro district. That's Eureka Valley. It is where gay San Francisco fought its way out of the closet in the 60s. There's a couple of older dudes, I guess they're my age or older, and they're kind of some of the people who are, I guess, the leaders of the public nudity movement in San Francisco. And you should see how they decorate themselves for Christmas. But that name, let's do that, and that because then I had one of you who said you originally hailed from Castro Valley. You know, that deals with the Mexican period in California history. It's a common Spanish surname. Middle, or let's say second quarter of the 19th century. I mean, you were having some wine made all the way back through the Spanish missionary period stuff, which is, you know, designed really, let's face it, to get you drunk and not all that tasty. Yeah, it was a ranching family, pretty successful group of ranchers, Castro brothers, Manuel Castro, Bautista Castro, Juan Castro. Probably 100,000 acres of ranch land, you know, that's a pretty good chunk of land. It's like 100 Golden Gate parks in the area. It's a little bit more land than the Napa Valley. Napa Valley is, well, the agricultural preserve is 38,000 acres, and then you're still really for everything under cultivation, maybe around 50,000 acres there. Oh, if you want to count everything, 600,000 acres in California. Maybe 525,000 of them are being harvested in any given year. You know, your vines get old, maybe the production goes too down for you to make any money. You rip out and replant, and maybe for a year or two there's nothing that you're harvesting from there in the late summer, or actually let's say the late summer and the fall. Where are we right now in San Francisco? We're right around what would have been the shoreline in, let's say, the gold rush. You would have had your dairy industry over on the left, and this was San Francisco Bay on the right. And, well, you know, speaking of things, Spanish and that, and the type of wines Americans will drink, what about Spanish wine? One of the nicest Spanish restaurants in the city where you could get either some Spanish grape varietals that are, let's say, grown by California growers, or the stuff from Spain itself. Alegria's on the right. We got to go slow through here. Might as well eyeball it. They're on the right. You want to come down here and do a walking tour on this street? Probably not, but maybe for the dogs. What they say about owners looking like their dogs. But a block to the right on the right, a block to the right of where we are is Chestnut Street in the Marina District. For the average visitor to San Francisco, you get out of the northeastern corner, you know, you're going to be off the beaten path. Most people who come to the Bay Area, even for vacation, are here 3 days or a little bit under 3 days. A lot of people package San Francisco with, you know, other parts of, nothing else, the western United States, maybe Vegas and LA. 25 million visitors a year, too. I mean, pound for pound, tourism is more important to San Francisco than it is to New York. New York gets about 50 million visitors a year, the actual city, but population, just in the 5 boroughs, is over 8 million. Here in San Francisco, even after the 2020 census stats come in, nobody's thinking that we're going to top 1 million, be more like maybe 950,000, we'll see, depending on how cooperative people are in filling out their forms. But from where I picked you up, the number 30 bus, for instance, could get you out to Chestnut Street. I'd recommend it. I mean, unless you're really familiar with the area, I'd take a municipal bus. I would, you know, can Lyft and Uber. You know, this way you're really going to get to hear some attitudes and see different groups of locals on the buses. Right. I know, coronavirus, so wear a mask. Yeah, and wash your hands. I don't know. I mean, red wine has immune-building properties. No, I just made that up. Don't think so. And, you know, the medical studies are conflicting in that, you know, there were some that say the substance they've isolated and you can have in tablet form. Oh, wouldn't that be fun? Instead of drinking the red wine, you have resveratrol in tablet form. How popular is that? Oh, I remember when it was kind of all the rage. You would find it, let's say, in your Whole Foods, kind of on a top shelf in the over-the-counter medicines. The only place where you find it on the top shelf anymore is if you go to the Sonoma Whole Foods. I live in Oakland, and there they've got it on the bottom shelf. It didn't sell. I have a special nickname for this on the right. This is the Palace of Fine Arts. It's a splendid relic from a 1915 World's Fair. Very, very popular for wedding photography. It and City Hall are the two most popular places. One of the reasons why cool climate grapes grow well in California is because we have some cool climate in these southern Italian, Sicilian, and tip of the Italian boot, the spike of the heel area. Trace the latitude line over to Europe, and that's what you got. But we have cool climate areas, and see, our first two wineries. Check my little thing they gave me. Yeah, exactly. They're both in the Carneros district, and I'll give you a little more on what that means, Carneros district. But it's a growing region, famous for its cool climate. It's on the southern boundaries of Napa and Sonoma. A lot of fog, a lot of cool air, especially overnight, will come right through the Golden Gate Strait and get sucked up to Napa and Sonoma and slam into that southern part. I mean, we need to talk about how that happens, but that's otherwise, I mean, maybe we'd just be growing hot climate grapes there. But that also is really going to affect San Francisco. Of course, the most common nickname for San Francisco is Frog City. There are other nicknames for San Francisco, largest outpatient clinic in the world, things like that. But anyhow, Frog City. It's hot and dry in the center of California. It's not really a global warming spiel, but as the records have been kept since the California Gold Rush. Center of the state, Great Central Valley, 400 miles long, over 100 miles wide. A lot of grapes grow there too. They don't grow really well for fine wine. They have to be big, fat, juicy grapes because you got to water like crazy. Otherwise, they shrivel into death. Yeah, suitable for jug wines. But that's going to be a suction on any kind of high pressure system out there in the center of the state. Hot air creating a low pressure system out in the ocean, yeah, then it's often relatively high pressure. And it's cool air because the current of water is just the opposite of what it is on the East Coast. On the West Coast, it's the California current, bringing us the cold stuff from the Aleutian Island latitudes of Alaska coming to the south. Keep that air cool. You have that suction. It comes in and it'll make its way eventually to Napa and Sonoma. And talking about my nickname for that Palace of Fine Arts and that, there are folks getting their wedding pictures taken there year-round. But what's the hottest time of the year in the Central Valley? It's the summer. And that. The temperatures in San Francisco don't go up in the summer. The average daily highs go down from the spring and the fall, but nevertheless, you have more brides in June than any other month of the year. So my nickname for the thing is Palace of Shivering Brides. I took too long to set that joke up. I'm sorry.
Keep it out.
Okay, we're crossing the Golden Gate Strait. Technically, this is not San Francisco Bay. We're going to leave the city and county of San Francisco, going to Marin County. Look at the Art Deco design, Americanized, streamlined, modern Art Deco of this North Bridge Tower. So look at those top three holes in the tower, and you see what you can call a Babylonian ziggurat-style decoration, 360 degrees all the way around, on the corners. And then look at this big yellow monster. It's the road zipper on the left, and you see what it's doing. Rush hour is over, and now we got 3 lanes in either direction. Again, on this 6-lane bridge. Yeah, Golden Gate Bridge, Chrysler Building, Empire State Building in New York, these are the 3 most famous large-scale examples of streamlined modern style Art Deco architecture in the world, period. You know, think of the silver needle on the top of the Empire State, and that you see that type of ziggurat pattern that I just mentioned, but they're just, you know, facing up, that's all, which, you know, is appropriate for that particular tower. Now, our first winery is a place called Vianza, and they're going to pour some French and maybe some Italian grape varietals for you. You know, there's a term you could use, nobody's really going to use it, but it means the same thing as varietal, subspecies, okay? Now, think about the famous Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet-Sauvignon. Those were 2 individual vinifera or vinifera subspecies combined. You know, they can be bred together. Oh, there are, I don't know, 1,000 sub-varietals to vinifera, something like that. There are sub-varietals, and you're going to really get to experience that today. So if that interests you, listen up, okay? The second winery we go to, a place by the name of Madonna Estate. You know, all the wineries are going to start out, they'll pour you a dry white, then a dry red, and then if they get into some dessert wines, it would be, you know, sweet white to sweet red. Yeah, Madonna is our second winery. Sutter Home is our third winery. Now, don't be scared, okay? By that, oh my gosh, we're going to a mega winery, isn't that stuff like all over the country? Yeah, that's the second biggest family-run winery in something like the country or the world. Yeah, a lot of stuff they make is cheap, but not exclusively, and their good stuff does not always make it everywhere across the country. I'm hoping that they're going to pour you a very nice Zinfandel, Sierra Nevada Foothills Zinfandel. We'll see if they do. You know, usually they pour some kind of decent dry red wine. They do have a real strength in dessert wines. I like it all, personally, white, red, dry, sweet, and that sort of thing. To me, it's a wide, wonderful world of booze out there that I'm committed to explore, except don't worry, I do that on my own time, and I have plenty of time on my own. I'll save it for, you know, tonight. You think I'm going to really seriously do a wine? You know, I do all of the tours. I mean, you can't really just do one tour and survive in the business very long. You're going to go crazy. You need the variety in that, you know? No way I'm going to do a wine tour and not have a glass of wine at the end of the day when I get home. Damn the torpedoes and full speed ahead on that one. This is Sausalito down to the right. Pretty easy place to taste wine. This is a great county for art, food, music, and wine festivals. In fact, I would tell you in California, they bow down to no one. They probably are a little bit better in that category even than Napa or Sonoma. In terms of the festivals, they grow a little bit in the way of grape and that. I don't know if there are any wineries in Marin or not. There are probably a few very, very small virtual winemakers. That's a topic we should probably talk about in the internet age, but it doesn't mean what you think. Basically what it means is maybe you're renting everything. You got some money. Maybe you're having somebody who says, yeah, I'll make your wine for you. You have somebody else who says, yeah, I'll buy the grapes for this other gal to make the wine for you. And let's also find a place where you can rent a crush pad for a day, rent a fermentation tank. You know, you're not a brick and mortar. You don't have your own place. Virtual winemaker. Again, 4,000 wineries in California, about 7,000 in the USA in total. So Sutter and that, before I forget to tell you, you know, the Muscat grape, I like a dry white French Muscat. It's wonderful white dry wine, but it's usually associated with being made into a sweet wine. It's, you know, the case of, are you going to ferment all of the sugar out of the grape, or are you going to leave some? A little bit of residual sugar, you have an off-dry wine. You leave a little more than a residual sugar, and you have a sweet wine. You can get very sweet, very sweet. The Hungarian Tokais and that. They have them graded on a scale of sweetness of 1 to 9. I mean, they're delicious. You'd only want a little bit. I've had a 5 or a 6, and that's just like nectar. I can't imagine what a 9 would be like. I've never seen anybody in the USA sell a 9. But yeah, Muscat. So you kill your little wild and crazy yeast cells that are eating the sugar in the grapes, and if you kill them before they finish the job of eating all the sugar, then you're leaving some residual sugar. You do that with your Muscat grape up at Sutter Home, and they tend to use the Alexandria subvarietal, or it would be a subspecies, okay? Now, by way of comparison, at Madonna Estate, they may, and you may have to ask them to do this, we'll see. Typically they do 5 pours, 5 1-ounce pours at Madonna, and I'm running the show now in terms of the yakking. In the wineries, that's their turf. And then, if one of those guys or gals was on board and they try to, take the microphone away from me, I probably would be offended, and vice versa. I can't really tell them what to do, but, you may say, well, gee, could you pour us a dessert wine? Our guide was saying that, you got some good stuff. And, the last group I had a bunch of folks who were really into sweet wines, and that's okay. And, I coached, when I found that out kind of early on, I coached them, and, they ended up with a little bit of Muscat Cannelli at Madonna Estate. So you see, that would be then a comparison. 2 different sweet Muscats, 2 different wineries, but also 2 different subvarietals. Got to make a little bit of a detour here. I hope I'm sorry. I just remembered this. I have a kind of a care package I want to drop off for my father here, and then we'll be back on the road. San Quentin State Penitentiary in front of us on the road. I'm sorry. I'm trying. I'll get it with a joke sooner or later. My wife says, you tell people these things. Try to break it up. I like to play a little bit. Ideally, on the way back, I like to play just some acoustic guitar music with no vocal and overdub over it some of the time and give you some time to rest. But this is just, this bus has its funkiness, and that I tested it this morning. And I just don't have radio, and I don't have CD, or can't use my phone to play my music either. Oh well. I'll just have to sing to you on the way back. Don't worry, I'm not going to do that. Well, we'll see. We'll see. There's Mount Tamalpais over on the left. It's associated with Muir Woods. And we have our high peaks in the Bay Area. There are no mountains in San Francisco. We want to use the kind of a standard definition for a mountain. It's got an old English definition for a mountain. You could say it's got to be at least 1,000 feet above sea level. 1,000 feet from base to summit. By that definition, within the city limits of San Francisco, there are 0. In the Bay Area, there are quite a few, and we are going to get a good, because we're going up to Sutter Home, you're going to get a look at an extinct volcano. In fact, to the best of my knowledge, the most recently extinct volcano in seismic history, in geologic history in California, Mount St. Helena. 4,339 feet tall, last blew its top about 1 million years ago. We do still have an active volcano in California. It's Mount Lassen. It's a national park or national monument. That's in the Cascade mountain range. Lassen is about 10,000 feet tall, and it erupted in the early 1920s. it's going to be hot in the front of this bus. Now, why can't I bend the rules a little bit, you know, and just maybe have our first winery, fiance, pour maybe just 1 ounce of wine in a nice tumbler, throw in some ice cubes, you know, give me some Pellegrino in there, and just have a spritzer to keep me cool to the next winery. No, it's not a good idea. It's just not a good idea. I mean, here's why, and I say this because pretty typically, at least towards the end of the tour, somebody will say, well, come on, I mean, you can have a sip of wine with us. I mean, you're talking about this stuff, we'd like to see you have a sip. And the problem is this, and it's going to vary for a different person, but even 1 sip or 2 sips, it's going to slow down your reaction time slightly. Let's say it slows down my reaction time by 1/4 or 1/2 second. Now, how many feet per second am I moving right now? And, you know, it could cause problems. That's why we don't do it. That's why we don't do it. There are laws involving this, you know, sort of occupation that I agree with and those that I don't. There's a big, big anti-marijuana smoking poster up in the Gray Line driver guide room, and that I am under Federal Department of Transportation regulations. So if you know, you have a guide and he's on vacation, she's on vacation, she takes a couple puffs of a joint, and then the next week goes back to work, and boom, all of a sudden there's a random drug test. It ends her career, just like that. I don't really agree with that particular regulation. That's a little bit too much marijuana prohibition, but there you are, you know, kind of the contradiction with the loosening and abolition of some of the pot laws. Yeah, it's a topic, and you know, this is kind of the way I do this. I kind of go back and forth and weave these topics around. We started in San Francisco, and we went through the loin, or tenderloin, and it got that name because if you were an officer back during Prohibition, you were tipping off the speakeasy owners as to when, let's say particularly the feds might be attempting to pull a serious Prohibition raid, or if it was state and local level, it would be a half-hearted raid just to look good for the feds. But you know, you would go and talk to somebody in a bar and, you know, knock on the door 3 times, and they'd ask you, who are you? And you'd say, hey, Joe sent me. And that's the code. You go in and you say, hey, Joe, you know, it's going to get hot here next week. It might be a good idea for you to just take a vacation for a week and take your stuff with you. Joe does as the officer has said, and then he returns and everything's back to normal. Next time he sees the officer, he kind of greases the officer's palms a bit in gratitude. This goes on for over a decade. Some of these officers are doing quite well. They can afford the best cut of the beef, the tenderloin. That's where the nickname comes from. Boy, the stuff you might drink then, if you were desperate enough, might kill you. Bathtub gin, high bacteria counts. Then after Prohibition, you have the re-beginning of the industry, but most people, like Bob Mondavi's dad, for instance, he gets out of the fruit and vegetable business. He buys an old, wonderful, renowned German-American winery of late 19th century California, the Charles Krug Winery, or Krug, K-R-U-G. You know, think of it, I mean, you'll see bottles and they'll say Krug on it. Well, they don't say Krug, actually. They'll say C.K. Mondavi. That was Peter Mondavi's fine winery. Charles Krug Mondavi, C.K. Mondavi. So Cesar buys that Krug winery, and they're making inexpensive jug wines because they feel there just isn't the market for fine wine, and it's not like they would have to learn how to make fine wine. A lot of expertise is lost during Prohibition, okay? I mean, this gets pretty intensive, and then there's a big showdown over what to do in the Napa Valley in the early 1960s. There are developers who want to build something like what we're on now, right up the middle of the Napa Valley and turn it into a bedroom suburb. The argument is, well, hey, really, I mean, it's only it's less than an hour's drive from parts of the urban core of the Bay Area. We're not trying to tell people, don't drink wine. We just don't understand why Napa is so important if there's no market for fine wine anyhow. People just, if they want the fine stuff, you know, they get it from the Europeans. Robert Mondavi, and I'll give you some other names, okay? Barbara and Daniel Winarski, Daniel Cakebread, Jim Davies, Andy Beckstoffer, and others. They fought like crazy in the halls of Napa County government saying, look, we can successfully move back in the direction of being a player, ultimately on a world scale, in the making of fine wine. And they got the agreement of Napa County, which designated the first agricultural preserve in U.S. history, Napa Ag Preserve. That's much of the Napa Valley. You want to read, you know, I mean, if you like to read, and that, a follow-up to a visit to Cali here, and especially up here, would be a trilogy of books, but just start with the first. Napa, The History of an American Eden. It was a guy who lives in Virginia most of the time. When he's not there, he's poking around in California. James Conaway, C-O-N-A-W-A-Y. Napa, The History of an American Eden. There's no chapter per se on that struggle to prevent the freeway development, but it is kind of woven into several chapters. Because that cement or whatever it is kind of heavy, huh? Yeah, 9-county Bay Area, the metropolitan area, you know, it's about the size and shape of the part of the country I lived in from '83 to half of 1991. That was Massachusetts. I remember you'd get on the Mass Pike in Boston in the Leather District, and the sign would say, I think, 120 miles to the New York border on Interstate 90, about 120 miles long, 50 miles wide. That's very similar to the Bay Area. Of course, there's the big liquid hard of 500 square miles of water in the middle of the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay. Yeah, in 2010, it was the 5th biggest metro area in the USA. We'll see what it will be in 2020, but it's going to be about 8.25 million, up from 7.68 million. It's the estimate in any case for the 2020 figure. The 2010 is accurate. Whoops. And then this is the North Bay, the 4 counties of the North Bay portion of the 9-county Bay Area, maybe about 1.25 million people, 40% of the land. That's all. Plenty of room for parks, plenty of room for grapevines. In our 9-county Bay Area, we like to advertise the fact that we have 1.1 million acres of parkland and open space. And, you know, that's, according to the daily newspaper, the Chronicle at least, that is more parkland and open space than you're going to find in any other metropolitan area, genuinely metropolitan area in the world, period. This county, Marin, it's about a third parkland. And over in the East Bay in that, where one of you originally hailed from and where I live, I remember I've hiked in Chabot and that part of East Bay Regional Parks. If I want a redwood hike and I don't want to battle the increasingly terrible traffic, I might settle for secondary growth redwood forest, redwood regional park up in the East Bay Hills. You know, there are grapevines growing over there in the East Bay too. I lived in a kind of mega suburb that in a way I was kind of glad to leave after a while, but Hayward, or south of Castroville. My wife and I lived there from what, like 95 to 99 before we moved to Oakland. And there were a few wineries up in one of those canyons there, and then there's a actually historically very famous grape growing and winemaking part of California where you find Wente and Concannon, Retzlaff, and maybe about 20 other wineries, the Livermore Valley. You know, we talk about grapevines and different varietals, Chardonnay and that, whatnot, and then there are the clones with somewhat different of a genetic makeup and that. The Dijon clones and the heritage clones are famous, especially in California for... Maybe this guy's trying to find a cutoff, I don't know, but I kind of want to pass him here. Let's get around him. A rental, I guess. Yeah, the Wente clone is a heritage clone. And Dijon clones, well, we're talking about the part of the world where actually the Chardonnay grape varietal hails from originally. Dijon, Beaune, Burgundy, Burgundian grape varietal, cool climate. Look at this, we're right down by sea level. Levees and dikes, this was all San Francisco Bay. San Francisco Bay was originally over 800 square miles of water. You know, I talked about the threat of development, you know, causing us not to have a famous winemaking and grape growing area called Napa Valley. We almost, I don't want to say we almost lost San Francisco Bay, but there were developers who wanted to continue filling in until the only thing left was the shipping lanes. We would have had maybe 150, 200 square miles of San Francisco Bay left had that happened. There was a woman, though, in the early 60s who stepped up to the plate, East Bay lady by the name of Kerr, K-E-R-R, Catherine Kerr. Kathy Kerr, the wife of the president of the University of California at Berkeley, Clark Kerr. She was overall back then more popular than Hubby Clark. He was getting it from the protesters on the left here denying our civil rights, and he was getting it from the UC Board of Regents to his right. Why can't you curb these protesters? Well, everybody ended up loving Kathy by the mid-60s. Well, there were some folks probably in the developmental area who did not. But she founded the Save the Bay Committee, and she persevered. She had a tough time initially with the Sierra Club. She made a presentation to them, guys, gals, we might lose San Francisco Bay. Think of the ecological balance, think of, you know, the aesthetic loss and that, and Sierra Club. You know, and I'm going to raise our bus up here again and go kind of slow because we got another nasty dip at the bottom of this hill here. Most of our buses don't bottom out like we did that one. By the way, the yellow trees, these are Australian and they're a little bit past peak. These are Acacia mimosa. Here's the dip. Made it. Yeah, welcome to Sonoma County. You're looking at Sonoma Mountain over on the left. Kind of an anticlimax, I realize, but it's a little taller than Mount Tamalpais at 2,600 feet above sea level. Yeah, Sierra Club said, well, nice presentation, Kathy. We empathize with you. Well, are you going to do it, or are you going to step up to the plate and join my Save the Bay Committee? Well, I guess we'll think about it, but frankly, Kathy, we've written off San Francisco Bay as a loss, and we've got to concern ourselves with saving the redwoods. Certainly they were right on the second point. They came around within about a year, as did a number of other organizations and municipalities, so we still have a bay, and we still have cool climate parts of Napa and Sonoma. Yeah, you can call them appellations if you want to get a little fancier. American viticultural areas, or A period, B period, A period. Okay, and I guess that's what I really need to focus on right now. Some of the things you're going to see on the label, you'll see a year. Let's say it's 2017. That is the harvest year, the year the grapes are harvested. And we call it the crush. The first thing that is going to happen is you'll de-stem the grapes, and then you'll do the crush. And there are all kinds of different ways of making wine, and you're going to learn some of that, and then, you know, I may fill in the blanks on some other parts of it. You'll see the name of the winery, so you're going to see Vianza on labels, you'll see Madonna Estate on labels, and you'll see Sutter Home on labels. And you'll see the place where the grapes were grown, and this is the 85% rule. If, for instance, there's a wine and it says Carneros on the label, then you know at least 85% of the grapes were grown in Carneros. The cool climate region, the other 15%, you come from anywhere. Might be 100% grown in Carneros, has to be at least 85%. Now let's see, is this field mustard or creeping wood sorrel? The yellow on the right, we're going to take a look. The wood sorrel is native to California, but that is field mustard. Well, let's go larger in size. Let's say, all my grapes I'm getting them out of Sonoma County, but not all out of Carneros. Well then, buddy, if 85% of your grapes are coming from all over Sonoma County, then just put Sonoma on the label. That doesn't mean Sonoma Valley. Sonoma Valley and Carneros, those are sub-appellations of Sonoma County. Hey, there are good wines where they're getting the grapes from a bunch of different counties in California. If that's the case, and 85% of your grapes at least are coming from California counties, then you put California on the label. My wife and I were back in Massachusetts a few years ago in Western Mass, and we were touring Edith Wharton home, and in the kitchen there was a bottle from New York State. I can't remember the name of the winery, but it was a Riesling grape varietal, and what that meant was, if it says Riesling on the label, or any grape varietal, that means at least 75% of the grapes and up are going to be that particular grape varietal. It said American on the label, it didn't say New York State or Massachusetts, certainly didn't say California. I figure probably 30-40% of their grapes came from some of the New England states. And the rest of them came from New York State. You tend to say, general rule of thumb, the quality in general is going to go down the bigger the appellation you have, but not necessarily. What if you get a really inspired winemaker? Somebody, maybe they're a virtual winemaker, somebody with a lot of bucks, and they're saying, I would like to make a cool climate Riesling, and I am going to ship grapes from different cool climates from across the USA to my folks where we're renting out a crush pad in New York. And then it might be a wonderful wine. I'll tell you though, let's say it's Saturday, I get off work and my wife says, Dougie, there's going to be a librarian's party on Sunday. I just found out about it. I need you to run down to the supermarket. They're having salmon, so, get a Pinot Noir. Get a Pinot Noir, and don't be afraid to spend some money on it. Don't be cheap. So I'm looking at two 2017 Pinot Noirs. They're $50 bottles, okay? One of them says Carneros on the label, another says California on the label. Which of the two is better? Well, I don't have the time to find out. If I'm going to find out to the best of my ability, I'm going to get out my phone, I'm going to read some reviews, and maybe go to the site. But I don't have time for that, right? So I'm going to go with the Carneros, because you're matching up a cool climate grape to a cool climate. Well, get ready, we're almost up to Vianza. Pretty much pulling in right on time. We're going to have all kinds of time at Vianza. We're going to want to leave about 5 minutes after 11, okay? So, let's say basically a good solid hour. And that is not going to be the length of the presentation at Vianza. What you're going to get in the main will be a guided tasting. You'll get a number of 1-ounce pours, and I really don't want to go through the steps of a guided tasting wine appreciation with you. It's just, It's less abstract when somebody else is coaching you and the glass is in your hand. But let's just say you're going to go slow, okay? And you're always going to want to take. Don't knock it back like it's a cheap shot of whiskey. At least 2 sips per pour, okay? And chew on it when it's in your mouth. And just one thing, some people think this helps, other people are not necessarily going to emphasize it. And that after you swallow, take a little bit of a breath through your mouth and release it through your nose, okay? Because a lot of your sensory would be your olfactory senses in your nose, and that enhance your appreciation. And I get the impression that a lot of you live in the United States. You know, they have direct shipping programs, unfortunately, and it's a relic of prohibition. You cannot do direct shippings to other parts of the world outside of the USA. And there are certain American states which still have a prohibitionist attitude and will not allow you to do the paperwork, and you know, you get in trouble, and the winery would get in trouble if they attempted to ship to you. You know, New York, Florida, places like that, you're okay. In most states, you're okay. But the reason I'm saying that is, I mean, if you do want to buy a case or two, I mean, we even have room in the cabin for that, but there's a whole luggage section of this bus for airport runs underneath the bus. We have plenty of room for cases. Gee, what would happen to it if you bought a case, we put it under the bus, and then you and I forgot it was there and you left without it? I don't know. That's not going to happen. There's another mountain range, the Mayacamas Range, in front of you. You're going to have a chance for some wonderful photography up where we are at Vianza. It is going to be, in many ways, the most photogenic of any of the 3 wineries. Beautiful spot. The name is actually a made-up word. V-I is Vicky, A-N is and S-A is Samuel. Sebastiani. They were a path breaker in the direction of introducing for the first time, or reintroducing for the second time, Italian grape varietals into and back into California. Remember, I told you we lost a lot of knowledge in Prohibition. I mean, if you had been just even a grape farmer and you didn't make wine of your own, and that, hey, I mean, you're ripping out your vineyards usually after a few years in Prohibition, planting fruit trees. There's Vianza, where you see the orange tile roofs up on the hill. Now, probably there will be a meter and greeter who hopefully will also be your in-house guide at Vianza. We're going to look for him. There's a nice little plaza where I'm going to drop you, and I'll also pick you up there. And there are washrooms right down there, right at plaza level. And then there are also sun, and that's not really an issue on a wine tour. All the wineries have washrooms. We have one in the back of the bus too. You know, I want to caution you though, what is best is for us to de-emphasize use of the one in the back of the bus for the beginning of the tour. That way, for the last leg back to San Francisco, if we need it, it's, you know, still smelling kind of nice. Mount Sonoma dead ahead, that's one of the sub-appellations of Sonoma County. You know, you can put Sonoma on a label, or you can put a Napa on a label. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean Sonoma Valley, it doesn't necessarily mean Napa Valley. I mean, if it really is truly the case that 85% of your grapes are coming out of Sonoma Valley, you'll probably want to drop that V word in on there. But then, of course, if they're just from the, I mean, if you want to be honest, and they're from outside of the valley, then that the honest thing to do would be to put Sonoma County on the label, but they'll let you just put Sonoma on the label, and then a lot of people are going to look at that label and they'll say, oh, Sonoma Valley, I'll buy it. Cagey, huh? There's plenty of good stuff coming out of all kinds of parts of Napa County and Sonoma County. However, yep, olive trees. And these are probably Monterey cypress trees that they have sculpted into something which might remind you of an Irish yew. And it could be Italian cypresses too. Redwoods are in the cypress family. You know, did you know that? They didn't used to be. Had an interesting little debate with somebody who just lived down.
Miguel, send me this picture.
No, but bus doesn't want to move here. That's very puzzling. Parking brake doesn't want to go up. Stand by, let me fiddle around with this one.
You do look like the pineapples coming.
Why did you send me that?
Sorry, you said you can.
I love it.
I have no service.
You can actually choose to work at like time. Like say for the week and just take the week off.
Oh, did you ever look up the prices for Carissa? Check alone here.
I haven't drunk. Or at work.
You what?
I've been drunk.
You've been drunk the whole time?
Oh my god, I think I'm gonna ask Gabby what his that tank list. Gabby, when he's like got a big weekend.
Because it was sensory deprivation.
Yeah. I can remember do it.
Yeah, because I remember when I was doing my roommate.
Oh no, you're
watching COVID. So just remember I am in the it would be the worst. Yeah, exactly that. It's just...
Oh no, you're probably sleeping, but I just want to say goodnight. Sometimes I am awake, but
yeah, I know. I fully know he's awake. I hear nothing and I'm like, I'm going to be like 5 minutes.
I'm done for the day.
Yeah, well, I think unfortunately at the next winery, what I'm going to do is be on the phone with the mechanic because I'm going to have to bust through a little bit on the parking brake to get this buggy to move. I guess I could think of worse places to be broke down than wine country, but at least let's be broke down at, at lunch, something like that. So, you gotta make sure you have an hour at the next winery, and then we're gonna have all kinds of time for lunch for you. I'm taking you to a Napa lunch in the Oxbow Market area. That's a wonderful gourmet quality food court, and it's next door to the CIA at Copia Central Intelligence Agency, Culinary Institute of America. So it can be, you can dine there. They literally have a great top-flight restaurant there. Besides that, and all the other places one can dine there, there's the Napa River. There's a river walk along the city of Napa's, along the city of Napa. There's a great barbecue restaurant called Bounty Hunter that it's kind of okay to get to from where I can stop and kind of, good lights and step in a little bit. Aspiring to give you about an hour and a half or more for lunch, and I don't think you'll get bored, especially if you spend a little bit of time at that Institute for the Appreciation of Marriage, Food, and Wine. More than anything else, that's Copia's role. They have their for lay people like us, and at the CIA, Culinary Institute of America, they train sommeliers, they have cooking classes, winemaking classes, and that's one for professionals. There is one in Napa, there's also one that's a but then they took over an endeavor which actually failed. It was the Mondavi Rothschild Collaborative Ethic that created the Coaching Institute in the 90s, in the late 90s. Robert and Doug are getting on the age. We're going to have to just take this here. When we can
They go home to
Friday training. I'll bet you in a minute.
It's also not a bad thing to work
Yeah, I don't want to cramp the style of the CHP here on the California Highway Patrol. Officer, I can explain. Oh, now we got a police escort. There we go. Better in front than behind. A lot of wineries through here in Carneros, Klein on the left, Jacuzzi on the right, which is owned by Klein. Sometimes we'll stop at one of both of these two. You know, talking about head train vineyards, I raised that. They don't have any here, but it is kind of an older style of growing vines. And the oldest vines in California are up to 140 years of age, and they're not even in Napa and Sonoma. They're in the Lodi area of the Great Central Valley. And you know, and, nowadays there's good wine coming out of there. For my friend who grew up here in that. A lot of locals in that are venturing out to the Lodi Appellation. Their quality and organic practices of making wine. They call their Lodi rules. And that is the town which was sung about by, I believe, Creedence Clearwater Revival, stuck in Lodi and you know, people like to do stuff there now. You're looking over a vast vineyard on the left past a frost-fighting vineyard fan with an orange blade to the glory of Ferrer winery, primarily sparkling is what they do, primarily sparkling. And I would tell you that possibly more than 50% of Carneros grapes are going to go into sparkling wine. The usual sparkling wine is 100% Chardonnay, 100% Pinot, or a blend of the two. You know, the juice within a red grape is white juice, with one exception that I can think of. French varietal by the name of Alicante Bouchette or Bouchet. That's actually a red juice in a red grape, but if you want a red wine, you've got to leave that skin contact there. Why would you not? Because a lot of it, especially in a red wine, flavor that you're going to glean out of it is going to come from the skin contact, like the fermentation. Rare white wines made that way now too. I mean, there are great top-flight white wineries where they're doing the traditional thing of removing the skins very early in the winemaking process. We either do a cold soak with the skins on, and then sometimes even a little bit of a partial ferment with the skins on. Usually heavy traffic for right around now. Yeah, this is Sonoma Carneros. Now we're going to cross the political county boundary line, and we'll go into Napa, and Madonna then is it's in Napa County. It is in Carneros, the Napa part of it. I mean, what do the grapes care about a political boundary line? They care about soil and climate. And that's what's really kind of cool about Carneros. 2/3 of it is in Sonoma, 1/3 is in Napa. You see a good map with detail of appellations. Carneros is kind of shaped like a bow tie. So the farther up these counties you go in general, the warmer the climate is going to get. There are exceptions, and the biggest one I can think of is in kind of northern Sonoma County. As much as Carneros is one of the most famous growing regions in California for a cool climate, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay, the most famous is the Russian River Valley And if, by the way, at lunchtime you go into the CIA Copium Institute, there are about 40 or 50 bronze plaques with, you know, the relief silhouettes of different leaders in the industry of today and historically. One of those, the woman who spells her first name casually M-E-R-R-Y, Marjorie Edwards, Mary Edwards. She has Mary Edwards Winery up in the Russian River Valley. All kinds of big names. Many more wineries than Carneros, which is just small. But I'm going to tell you that while we're in Carneros, then if some of you are staying or you get to the Fisherman's Wharf area, there's actually a place where you can taste, I mean, it's kind of, you wouldn't think I'd be talking about a San Francisco tasting room at Fisherman's Wharf. It's, you know, not what the area has a reputation for, but there is one called the Winery Collective, which is probably one of the best places. It's definitely the best place to taste Carneros Pinot Noirs. They call it a collective because it's just a tasting room space, which is collectively leased by a bunch of different Carneros wineries. And then what I'm doing here is just also kind of like officer, I can explain material here. You know, state law. I'm going to do it here at least the first time by the book. I'm hoping our door will shut when we go over the track. This is by the book. You do it this way. It's called Stop Looking Us. You know, should the law be set up like that? I'm not going to argue that. It's easier than explaining to the cops why you got it. One more time. So, well, we have a problem with some oaks that have passed due to sudden oak death syndrome. We have some deciduous oaks in that, and I saw kind of a darker trunk, which was probably a valley oak. We'll wait for the leaves to come in. Oaks are a big deal in California, and it's kind of good for the environment to not cut down all the trees, even in wine country. They just had a big political battle about that in Napa County. In the fall of 2018 on the ballot measure was a Measure C over whether or not to cut 895, only 895 acres of oaks up in the primarily Baca Mountains, which are a little bit to the east of where we're going, but we'll see the Bacas. The Napa Valley is, let's say, bookended by this mountain range in front of us, the Mayacamas, and the Bacas we're about to see on the other side. Were the law to have passed, and it just, the initiative, it just barely went down to defeat. Only 895 acres of oaks could be cut. To me, that seems like too much, but as it is, there's no restriction outside of the agricultural preserve. It can't be done in the preserve. There's something, the kind of, let's say, alliance between environmentalists and grape growers and winemakers that was really pretty strong, almost rock solid in the days of the writing of Napa, the history of American Eden, around 1990, and that they kind of frayed. I mean, if the valley is all planted, what can be planted in the valley, and you still want to plant more in Napa County, where are you going to go? Up into the hillsides, up into the mountains. There's the Pope Valley, the Childs Valley, Wild Horse Valley, Howell Mountain, Mount Veeder, Spring Mountain, Diamond Mountain, Atlas Peak, two mountain ranges. I mean, one concern has been siltification of the Napa River. On a steep slope, how do you plant? I mean, maybe there are some slopes that are just too steep, period. And then there are folks here who will, I mean, on a gradient like this, if you plant straight up and down, and I can actually hear everything is, you know, pretty much contoured, terraced, but they're on the right, for instance. I mean, you're going to have a problem with erosion there? Probably not. But imagine if you had maybe a 20% grade. Why would you want to plant straight up and down on a steep grade? Perhaps because you don't want to disturb the soil because you feel that the soil and minerality in the upper layers may be your winery's particular claim to fame. Yeah, it can be. I mean, it has been done successfully many years ago. When I first started coming up here as one of the tours I did, this is back in maybe the mid-90s, something like that. I took a charter group up to the Chalk Hill Winery. One of you, gave me the input that I think you liked the Pinot Grigio best on it, everything they poured. Chalk Hill, at least at the time, was winning a lot of awards for their Chardonnay. The soil looks chalky. On the surface levels, it's volcanic ash from the eruption of Mount St. Helena a million years ago. All kinds of gifts from that eruption. There's a petrified redwood forest, for instance, up around Calistoga. I mean, I don't recommend you start admiring redwoods by going to a petrified redwood forest, but that's a real nice touch. You've had a few under your belt. You're spending a few days in wine country. Later on, I'll even tell you about the fact that there's a small, but nevertheless old growth redwood, I don't know if we'd call it a forest, let's call it a grove, up in Napa near Calistoga, and it is much studied by environmentalists for different reasons. Okay, we're going to leave Sonoma County up here. We'll see, we're going to try to get a look all the way back to San Francisco over the rolling hills of Carneros. And you're looking at these little beige cylinders on the right. So this is a young vineyard, and for the very, very young vines, they can, kind of the first form of a pestilence which might ruin your vineyard could be Punxsutawney Phil, the groundhog, or, Bugs Bunny, the jackrabbit. If it's still a tender shoot, then that they can bite into it. Once they go woody, then you no longer have to worry about those particular predators. Others come to the fore. Okay, welcome to Napa County. There's the Baca Range in front of you. You spell it when you see it. Still Carneros, though, just Napa Carneros now. And yeah, we're doing okay. A couple minutes and we'll make it to Madonna Estate. Now there is no, I'm going to pound my fist for emphasis, absolutely, positively, no relationship with the famous female vocalist Madonna. Okay, it's simply the name for what they feel is one of their finest vineyards. And the word estate means something, okay? It's a good term. It's not, oh, well, they're trying to say they're fancy schmancy. No, it means that within it's either a 5 or 7 mile radius, within that space is where they are growing 95% of their grapes, and then they're making 95% of those grapes themselves into wine, and they're bottling 95% of that. Now take note of the bottling part, because they'll probably take you into the Madonna Estate barrel room, and you'll see an itty-bitty bottling plant. Now, there are companies, and family businesses where they own a tractor trailer or two, and there's a bottling plant right in the back of the tractor trailer. You call them up, you order, you say, well, we're ready to bottle, come, they back the trailer up to your barrel room, and they bottle, and yeah, you can do it that way, but you can't have a state on the label if you do it that way. It gives you a bit more. The theory is it's giving you more control over the winemaking process, and perhaps that results in greater quality. Some people don't like the word estate, though, and it's going to depend on who you market to and that. And if you think your market might be oft put by it, well, the industry has thought it through, and there is an alternative term which means exactly the same thing legally, and that is grown, produced, and bottled, interchangeable with estate. This on the right, it looks like a French chateau, the Tattinger Chateau in Champagne, France, Domaine Carneros. The sparkling winery is owned by Tattinger. A lot of European cabinet, primarily in the sparkling wine area, French and Spanish. Spanish called sparkling wine cava. It's grown in France, and it's coming out of that part of France called Champagne. They can put Champagne on the label. Here's McDonald's. A whole lot of mustard going on. Yeah, there are large, medium, and small wineries. They like to call the small ones boutique, and depending on who you talk to, you've got to make less than 50,000 cases to be called a boutique. Some would say, others might say 10,000 or less. They make about 10,000 in Madonna. Yeah, there's no legality around that. It's just business. I think you can make 1 million cases, and if you wanted to put boutique winery on the label, I don't think anybody can successfully sue you. You know, and I'm going to give you about an hour here. Then once you come back, it's maybe, I don't know, 15 minutes to lunch, something like that. We're near the city of Napa. It's the only significant town or city population-wise in the whole county. Napa County is the least populous of the 98 counties. After Napa itself, which is just about 85,000 people, there's a bedroom suburb south of it by the name of American Canyon, a little urban sprawl type of community the way it looks. That's about 15,000 more. That's out of about, you know, again, 140,000 people or so. Now, I am going to ultimately park the bus over by the dumpsters on the left, so I'll just have you walk back over to there. And let me get you right on up here. We're going to gather up among the pebbles and chairs and fountain on the left, and I'll find your guide. Take your time, watch your step. You know, if they wanted to send me to bus mechanic school, they'd have to pay me to do that. I'm a driver and a guide in any case. And I tried calling the mechanic wasn't home. Well, yeah, it's Friday. Mechanics, they have the life of Riley.
It's like,
Bear with me.
an outrageous 48 hours. I was like, you're not going to be too late.
That was kind of weird, actually. You know, you want to have a certain amount of air pressure in the air brakes. Air brakes are fine with about 125 pounds of pressure. That's what you want. But the way the parking brake works in the bus is that the air pressure keeps the brake off. And if there isn't enough air pressure, the brake comes on. Brakes should come on when the air pressure drops below, like, say, 50 pounds, okay? Not 100 pounds. So, yeah, that's kind of a big bowl of wrong in there somewhere. Anyhow, we'll just rev it up like crazy every time we're ready to go again. I think that's the solution. That's what we're dealing with. Hopefully we'll just stay up for it. Yeah, so lunchtime, I really should focus on that for you. I mentioned a few places. Bounty Hunter, for instance. Wonderful for their, I mean, a lot of things. A wineless barbecue chicken. A nice combination is Zinfandel. That'll pair really well with some of those spicy barbecue sauces. You're going to go the route of ordering a glass of wine. I mean, you're doing that on your own dime, obviously. And then we have one more winery this afternoon, the place by the name of Sutter Home. And as I was telling one of you, two of you, a whole lot of wineries to look at and learn a bit about on our way up to Sutter Home. If you you want to go the route of seafood, even shellfish and maybe sparkling wine and maybe some French champagne and oysters, there's Hog Island Oyster Company. You know, it's Friday afternoon. Where we're going, Oxbow Market, it's actually not that big of a destination yet for the tour industry to bring folks who are largely out-of-towners like yourself into, but it has really caught on with locals and regionals like myself and my wife. If I have a weekend where I want to, you know, if she wants to come up to wine country, we don't a lot of time, maybe a day or less than a day, because we're taking care of her 89-year-old mother-in-law. That's what her mother-in-law loves wine. By the way, she likes the Zinfandel, which is highly alcoholic. Has a nickname for it. She calls it Sleepy Juice. You know, one glass and she's done for it. Drink away, Nancy, drink away. Kind of my attitude. She's a wonderful woman. She used to be a professional accordion player. Even played in some of the political functions in Washington a long time ago, back in the 20th century. Remember the 20th century? Yeah, again, these are vineyard fans here on the kind of a first line of defense against frost. Now, if there's freezing temperatures overnight now, who cares? There's no vines, there's no flowers, let alone grapes on the vines. I mean, the perfect storm would be if, well, let's say it was early April and you had a real freakish freeze, which was going to go, well, let's say maybe 4 or 5 degrees under freezing, Fahrenheit. First thing that would happen is the temperatures got into the mid-30s would be the vineyard fans would come on, and the theory is that you're mixing the air up 30, 40 feet above the vineyard, which is going to be a degree or two warmer than at vineyard level. You equalize the temperature out, and that's maybe all you need to do. Well, yeah, it might be all you need to do, but if you have flowers on the, I mean, the flower is going to pollinate into the grape. It's a self-pollinating flower. It doesn't need bees or bugs, birds, or anything like that. They're not really all that pretty to look at. They're about the width of the diameter of the petals. You call that the corolla. It's about the width of the petals. But if those little buggers freeze, it's kind of a flower. And then, so you're going to bring in the vineyard heaters, and it's really looking bad. You can rustle up some old-fashioned sponge pots, maybe do that too. And a real act of desperation would be hiring a helicopter pilot, more than one, to hover above the vineyard to mix up the air even more. You wouldn't do that if you had heaters and maybe sponge pots. You know, it hopefully works out. And you wouldn't want the pilot to make a mistake. That hasn't happened in a long time. You get too close to the vines, you blow the flowers off. It's also kind of a... Now look, it's a freeway up kind of the west central side of the valley, but I told you they fought off freeway development. They did. There could have been double freeways up the relatively skinny Napa Valley. It's no wider than 5 miles wide east-west. It's 30 miles north-south, and we'll be going north after lunch, and it narrows down up around Calistoga, a few miles north of where we're going to be, a bit under 2 miles. All right, so welcome to the city of Napa. Yeah, forgive me, I can't remember the name of the Italian-style restaurant in Oxbow, but you'll find it once you get into Oxbow. It's not a super sprawling complex. I would recommend, you do a big stroll and see everything it has to offer. Sandwiches, sushi. Don't get too boozed up, okay? Well, we'll see. As long as you don't take a swing at me or anybody else, okay? You want to do some spirits tasting? Yeah. What about a nectarine eau de vie? They have it. It's French for water of life. You know? distill fruit and distill the remains after fermentation. If you just do it with grapes, go ahead and call it what the Italians call it, grappa, and then take your grappa as an example and put it in oak barrels for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Well, you got brandy. Do it in a particular region of France and call it cognac. Do it. I actually like Armagnac because that makes me a tough guy. People say it's rougher than cognac. Southwest. Here we're just going to call it grape. Nice park. Redwood tree. And a different species of redwood, that's the mountain redwood or giant sequoia on the right. If you look closely at the leaflets, it almost kind of looks like the branches become a thick green tube. But if you were to crack one of those open, you can see redwood in it. Those are mostly concerned with heat retention, so the leaflets of the branchlets closely. The coast redwoods, they're concerned with maximizing their fog condensation. And the leaflets are arranged in, kind of two open rows along the rows. I'm going to have this man with our bicycle escort here. Maybe a VIP treatment. Residential architectural forms include, but are limited to Victoriana, the shingle pattern, which is out on this big cottage, 7 feet up in front of us on what we would call a Queen Anne style fish scale.
Where's the thing?
Pretty famous publication in California for the industry is the Wine Spectator. They are big-time advocates of the Robert Parker 100-point rating scale. Here are the administrative offices of Wine Spectator in front of us. There are people who dissent the Parker scale, and they think it's a little bit too fruit-friendly and not balanced enough. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but I'm saying it's one of many areas of controversy. I might even run into a sommelier in a San Francisco restaurant who would say, oh, the Parker scale. Yeah. Put out in a big way by the Wine Spectator. My nickname for Wine Spectator is Wine Dictator. There are a lot of good, you learn a lot about the industry. There are a lot of great articles in Wine Spectator. This is a nice Victorian corner house in front of us on the left. You have a couple different shingle patterns there, if you're really into shingle patterns. The notches on the left were very, very common in the 1880s as well as the 1890s. I'm sorry, Napa. All right. I'll go through a part of downtown Napa. With your lunch. And again, I mean, if you wanted to high step it a little bit, maybe you end up going to Bound. There are sweet treats at Oxbow Market. There's ice cream. There's cupcakes. There's Fieldwork Brewery tasting room. Craft fruits. All in Oxbow. Where I can stop with a big old bus this size is going to be in front of the Copian Institute. And again, whether you do it before you've done, well, here's the thing. I would recommend that you find a place to dine first. See how we'll find out. You'll find out how the lines are at Oxbow, and then, again, a few more things I have to show you where you can dine. And then if you have some time left over after that, which in theory is you're going to, I'm giving you until 2:30. I'm going to want to meet you back where I drop you off no later than 2:30. Hour and a half. You don't get indigestion that way, you know? So we're coming up on the Napa River. Now here's this place I'm mentioning called Bounty Hunter on the right. My wife and I. Nice one. And then we're on the other side of the river and on the other side of the tracks. Again, you have good rides and you want to high step it, a river walk. They'll have probably movies outside of the river tonight. You don't have to come over to this side. Most of you, I'm sure, will not. The wine train that it embarks from right around here in Napa. You know who brought us the wine train originally? Ernest and Julio Gallo. I can't even remember when they still owned it and it was unpopular in the 1990s among some of the winemakers and vineyardists because it didn't stop at any of the winery as the vintage diesels chugged their way up the Napa Valley. And Gallo said, why are you protesting so much? We're pouring your wines. We're advertising your wineries. That's not good enough. I can remember signs in the vineyards as I would bring people up, which would read wine train with that international symbol of a circle with a slash over it. Eventually the Gallos gave in and now every wine train is going to make a stop up at a winery. All right, stay on the correct side of the law here again, we will. There are a few tasting rooms up here too. Now if you do want to taste here, remember you're doing it on your own dime. I wouldn't expect a tasting fee under 10 bucks. In fact, I should probably say I wouldn't expect one under 15 bucks per person. Okay, where else might you eat? Well, here's a pizza place on the right. Kind of an older family style place that's been here forever. Gott's Roadside Refresher on the left. They have one in the Ferry Building Clock Tower. Model Bakery is where I'll probably get a great chicken sandwich. M-O-D-E-L, Model Model Bakery on the other side of Gott's to the left. That would be a to-go thing. Yeah, they have a little patio outside. Okay, here it is. Oxbow Market on our left. The Kitchen Door is the name of the nice Calatel restaurant inside. Fieldwork Brewing, Kara's Cupcakes, yada yada yada. Pinot Noir Place, Walt on the right, tasting room, specializing in Pinot Noir. And then this is Copia Institute, CIA and Copia in front of us on the left. Now I'm just going to drop you off at their carriage entrance and park around here somewhere, and then I'm going to pick you back up here at 2:30. Organic vegetable gardens, accessed and planted by the various restaurateurs. There's the sunset there. There is a very fine restaurant in Copia itself, and let's see, is this place open? Yeah, the little cafe is open here in front. There are a few picnic tables over to the right. Main entrance to Copia in front of you. Remember, you go in there and look for those bronze plaques. I don't think you're going to be reading a couple paragraphs times 40 in a plaque, but maybe if you see the name of some winemaker or somebody who you think is important, take a picture with your phone for later on. They've got a souvenir. So, if you have any questions, we can talk outside. Oxbow's on the left. I'll see you about 2:30. We are going to go on the Cuban Highway on the way up the valley, west side. There's going to be a little bit of freeway, but there it is. You can see a lot of things wineries, and get you past Mario Andretti's winery. He's not a winemaker, he's not a great grower, but he's a the winery this company will sometimes go to. Up at Big Ranch Road.
Is it not working? Yeah.
You just I regret not being able to go way, way up the Silverado Trail with you, but I'm going to give you a little taste of it. And if you can remember this highway on the east side of the valley, you come up here, you know, a bicycle and you're over in the car. I would tell you the way to go. It's that name from a Robert Louis Stevenson novel, He wrote that before he wrote Treasure Island. He married a woman from Monterey. My honey moved up around Calistoga. And a couple of cedar trees on the right. Yeah, stuff goes well for California. No true cedar tree at all. Native plants are a big deal in California because we've lost 2/3 of our native species of trees and shrubs. So we'd like to save all of that. You know, these valleys, somebody taking a picture of a new salamander at Madonna State, photographing some of the native grass that they planted just as an ornamental. You see some more of that all the time. You just visualize grass is almost looking like spider plants, but lower in some places, 4 or 5 feet tall. Who's the color of this fish? Answer. Oh.
Come up to your husband.
Why doubles? Yeah, instead of.
For those of you who may have been here before, there are a bunch of, they're called crossroads. And you see some of those names, Yountville Cross, Oakville Cross, and things like that. It's a long, skinny valley, two major highways, this being one on the east and west side of the valley, linked together by the crosses. If we were in a smaller vehicle, I would give you a number of miles. The bridges over the Napa River are not designed to handle vehicles of this weight, unfortunately. They really make the papers collapse the bridge. So I'll do the best I can. These are live oak trees, coast live oaks. We follow up with Australian blue gum. There are other things growing in there too. California grapevines. So I know that some of you are in the mood for a nap at lunch, so I think I'll just do some spot this on our way up to Sutter. We're scheduled for 3 o'clock tasting there. We come in 5-10 minutes late, so we're totally up to that. bunch of piles of ripped out pines and everything on them. It'll probably be and it looks rather brown off in the distance to the right. The worst fires were 2017. 16 different fires between the neighborhoods. If I was in a smaller bus, I could show you Cinderella winery, which was destroyed as well. If we went to the right here, there's no reason why we could take this bus, this road, we have to go way past all the way up to Kevinstone. That would be bad, but you have to tell them advertise this as a bit longer tour. Then, you know, it is that they will respond by saying, Doug, you already make it a longer tour than it is. Don't push it. Type of trellising called quadrilateral trellising on the right. Actually, it looks like you have 3 branches, 1, 2, 3, up to 4 branches. More branches, they call it cordons than that, actually go back to that Sangiovese vineyard the onside. Typical head training vineyard is they have 5 cordons sticking up at the 45. On the right, that's just another form of very, very young fines. Also saw the ash tubes I pointed out. noted for their Barbera by Italian. There's the signage for the record. His grandson races at such places as Sonoma. If we go back, Golden Gate Bridge will pass by Sonoma Raceway, pointing out to the city. Later on, we're going to look for Englewood, and we're going to see a beautiful, simply elegant winery by the name of Trifecta. In front of us under a salmon-colored farmhouse style called Gravity Flow Winery, 19th century. Make gravity your friend and hoist your grapes to be crushed to the attic. You do the crushing in the attic. Pulp low down a level to the fermentation level. You have to have down another level to the barrel. It could be kind of dicey in the 19th century if you were looking for quality wine, and you're saying, I'm going to wait until the grapes are at the peak of perfection in my Gravity Flow Winery, and then just at the right time, we're going to crush them. But with the level of weather prediction of the late 19th century, what if it's really, really hot on the day you decide to crush? It's going to be really hot in the attic. Gravity flow actually makes more sense now than it did. But a famous winery architect, Irish-American guy by the name of Hamden McIntyre, designed Trifecta, Farniente, which I'll also point out in Inglewood, the salmon-colored building on the right. That's a small part of Trifecta. Once we get around the stand of trees blocking our view of the main winery, I think we'll crane back to the right. We're lucky to have it in a way. We almost lost it to an earthquake. Not the 1906 earthquake, not the 1989 earthquake, the 2014 earthquake. That was the South Napa earthquake fault. The epicenter was where the Napa River meets San Pablo Bay, underneath the marina, 6.1 on the Richter scale. It would have been here late August 2014. There would have been a lot of damage in downtown Napa. In fact, we wouldn't have been able to go into Napa that way. I can remember even as of, let's say, about 2-3 years ago, there were telephone pole-sized struts holding the wall up that you could see on the right. You know, now it's all ready. And nobody even knew there was the South Napa earthquake fault until it, made its presence felt. Periodically, new ones were discovered. And we're paralleling the tracks of the wine train, as you can see there on the left. This is Highway 29. I don't know if we're going to have, okay, we can see Mount St. Helena. I mentioned it this morning. It's the one looming off in the distance in front of you on the left. Let's see, that's the northern border of the Bay Area. Northern Napa County, and really kind of northern Sonoma County. Flat topped because it blew its top. All kinds of distinct volcanoes in the Bay Area, over in the East Bay, up in the regional parts. But they're much more ancient by a factor of 10 to 30, 10 to 30 million years earlier than St. Helena, where they have blown their tops. So I'm not going to tell you I'm a geologist, but I can read, and information I'm giving you now coming out of the World Wine Atlas, some of the introductory pages, and a section on Napa. A couple of English anaphiles will edit and re-edit that every 5 years. They're getting out of years. I don't know if they're going to keep doing it or not. Hugh Johnson and Jancis Robinson. And they make the statement that geologists say that the soil here in this particular wine country is as diverse and complicated as you're going to find anywhere else in the world in any other wine country. So that gives the grape growers a lot to work with. That's a reason why maybe after a few years, when you have a root system established, you might want to dry farm it. You know, you might pay for it in the sense that you have a smaller crop here. Shooting here for 2 to 8 tons of grapes per acre. Out in the center of California, the Central Valley, I mean, you can plant Chardonnay, Cabernet grapes there like you can here. You get 30 tons of grapes per acre. Oh yeah, about $500 a ton. You can get about $7,000 a ton or so for the best out here. And as I was saying, I think to just some of you, we are going through 3 of the most famous Cabernet Sauvignon sub-appellations in the United States of America, respectively Oakville benchlands, Rutherford benchlands, and then St. Helena, that's where Sutter Home is. This is the town of Yountville. I'll talk about Yountville on the way back. Named for a Missouri pioneer, George Palmer Yountville, in the Mexican era. That would have been the second quarter of the 19th century. Domaine Chandon off to the left, a very prominent sparkling winemaker, owned by Moet and Chandon of Champagne, which is owned by Louis Vuitton. Farniente's over on the left on the other side of the Napa Valley. 19th century one. We are coming up on the Robert McDowell winery. Remember, he passed away. It's currently owned by a corporation, a big mega corporation that owns wineries worldwide by the name of Constellation Brands, but it doesn't say Constellation Brands, it says McDowell. Still quality wine. You want to buy a Cadillac and trash it? No, why would you bother buying it? Essentially, a car and people are going to run it into the ground. Constellation's done a good job of it. On the other side of this stand of trees, we're going to see the Mondavi-Rothschild collaborative effort that resulted in the Bordeaux-style blending winery by the name of Opus One, a real pioneer. That area over on the right with the turret on the top. Very expensive wine coming out of there, and is it going to read Cabernet Sauvignon on the label of a red bottle? No, it is not. It's just going to say red wine. The Bordeaux blend won that big, usual manifestation of it. Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Petit Verdot, Cabernet Franc, and Malbec. Rare for any one of those noble grape varietals to be more than 75%. You know, anything blended coming out of France. So blending is hardly a dirty word. So for benchlands, by benchlands we're talking about kind of, let's say, where the kind of where the soil is a bit more volcanic sediment on the edges of the valley. And then the Rutherford benchlands. Cherry blossoms, plum blossoms in bloom a bit early this year. One of the many wonderful Cabernet Sauvignon makers, Sequoia Grove. Signage for Niebon Lane, Finnish sea captain Gustav Niebon founded Inglenook. That's nobody's name, it's a place name. There on the left is, again, Andy McIntyre's story. Inglenook Winery owned by the movie mogul Frankie Coppola. You want to taste the Inglenook wines? Down in North Beach in San Francisco is the Cafe Zoetrope, where Columbus and Broadway and Grant Avenue come together. It's pretty much the full line there. Tell them you took Doug's tour and they'll pour it all for you for free. Isn't that nice? Gurgich Hills Estate on the left. Ilyenko Gurgich's 1973 Chateau Montelaine. It took more points than any other white or red French or American wine in the famous Judgment of Paris of 1976. The movie Bottle Shop was based on that event. Boy, poor Mikey Gurgich. He got no credit in that movie at all. Hollywood didn't want to see a little shorty of a guy instead of big strapping blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy basically plays his role here. And that was Jim Barrett, and he was the winery owner. Certainly he deserved to get some credit, but he was not the cellar master. It was Gurgich's handwork. In the red category, it was the Daniel and Barbara Wodnarski, 73, Stag's Leap, Cabernet Sauvignon. Who was the winner? I can't remember exactly what the Chateau Montelena white was, about 10 points more. Chateau Montelena, the Leonardi family owns Whitehall Lane. There was another company, I worked with about three different companies. I usually do split it up between different companies. With one, we would go to Whitehall. They have a big stainless steel conveyor belt that moves real slow. It's about, I'd say, 5 feet wide and 30 feet long. They'll have winery workers on either side of it during the crush who will be quickly picking out the what they call MOG. You may have heard of that term from one of the winery guys. The material other than grapes. There are different ways of picking the grapes. It can be done by machine, and you can still end up with a quality wine. It's just, if you do it by machine, you're going to end up with a lot more material other than grapes. So you're going to have to compensate for that somehow. Whitehall compensates for it with that conveyor belt. Here's the wine train in front of us on the right. Satui Winery on the right. One of the only places I know that makes in Madeira. Press Club on the left. There's a press club in San Francisco too, between the Four Seasons Hotel and the Marriott Hotel. All right, here's Sutter Home. Across from Louis Martini. And I'll just put it this way, we'll go when we're ready to go. We'll be here anywhere from, let's say, maybe a half hour to 45 minutes, maybe a little longer. This is our last one or two. Stand by. Why is my door not open? Oh man! Here goes. It just decided to open. Okay. Follow me. Let me leave here. Take your time. Watch your step.
Which one do you want first? We'll do a little chicken
Oh, you can drink right out of the bottle.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying.
little bottle?
You want that? Like,
Yeah,
I,
go ahead.
we can drink it all.
We have the big ones.
Can we get a bath?
Well, I wish I could tell you that I had real happy news from GPS, but it is Friday rush hour, about an hour and 45 minutes is the fast way. That's the Golden Gate Bridge. I'm going to go down a little bit below the bridge for a quick scenic stop. And we don't want to mess around with any major places where a bunch of buses stop us because we're doing the drop-offs. And then at that point, maybe when we're coming back from that scenic view, I'll figure out where you want to go. I mean, obviously, you're going to do the Union Square stop, but, might be a few more places, so we might be staying at Sherman's Wharf. There's someplace near any of the major stops that you need to go. I might be able to customize it a little bit. Which one?
I like your comment to Hillary.
After the judgment of Paris, William Booker was running the business by himself, but he needed a capital backer that was Austin Hills Brothers Coffee. That's why it's called Gurgage and Hills, and then eventually they bought enough vineyard land right around the winery and used the estate, which works very well. See another interesting place in the early 90s, or mid-90s, it was kind of a failing winery by the name of Raymond. It's not failing anymore, and it is a Boisset or Boisset winery, Jean-Charles Boisset, from a French winemaking family. I'm a big advocate of biodynamic wines. Growing up, until you applied biodynamics, it's pretty big in organic trend in California. As for to the letter biodynamics, it's really still kind of a minor trend. It's a little trippy. A lot of vineyardists will accept the idea of farming by the cycles of the moon. This is something that was actually started in Austria.
My winery, David, the real wine.
Is the big advocate, is the better association. They have a North American headquarters in the state of Oregon, the Willamette Valley, which, by the way, is really so yeah, it's within the boundaries of organics, but it's a little bit different. I mean, imagine you take a couple of ram's horns, hollow horns, you fill one up with Commodore, you fill one up with a silk, and you call it, let's say, to better preparation 84 and 202. And I'm just not even going to open the door because of the problems I'm having with our air. So you have your ram's horns filled with these substances. You bury them in your vineyard. Let's say maybe what you think is the best place in your vineyard. You leave them in there for a few years. You dig them up, and then, kind of similar to homeopathy. You water things down to maybe 1 part per 1,000, 10,000. Very good with that. According to the Demeter Association, then you bring in the spirit, the best part of your vineyard to the rest of the vineyard. Not everybody accepts that. If they don't, they're not going to be able to get the Demeter label if they don't use some of those preparations. Maybe take the idea that's okay. We're just going to use the parts of biodynamics, apply those parts to our version of organics, and let's go. Boisset goes for the whole 9 yards. family owns a bunch of wineries, and they kind of married into the Gallo family. And they said, well, we're going to cheap chug wines, fine French wine, such winemaking in great one templates brought to the United States. It doesn't sound like a much more I'll tell you. Gallo has a premium division too. The daughter's first, Gina Gallo of Sonoma. Best place overall to grow Cabernet Sauvignon grapes in Sonoma. It's kind of up valley north of the town of Sonoma, north of Healdsburg and Alexandria. The winery is either there or in Russian River, which is a lot of awards. Married since 2009. I mean, this guy, Jean-Charles Boisset, has a flair for theater, and he has some very, very high-end tasting rooms, including in his winery, the Raymond Winery. If you wanted to, you mind dropping a lot of money, the Ritz-Carlton Hotel has a JCB tasting range. I don't know if they're pouring, I don't think they're pouring anymore. $600 glasses of Cabernet Sauvignon. I think they ran out of the Screaming Eagle. There on the right you have a white egret. I said Screaming Eagle, and the egret says, please, we're out. A cult wine, thousands of dollars a bottle, and then sometimes the folks who buy those wines don't even like wine, they just buy them as a very speculative investment, double their money on the sale. There's Monkey's place again. I don't know if anything's happening, from the standpoint of being rare, higher prices justified when some of the prices are stratospheric. But as for then explaining, I mean literally a $600 glass of Cabernet Sauvignon. This would have been poured out of a $3,000 bottle of Screaming Eagle Cabernet Sauvignon. So, 3,000 divided by 5, there you go. Maybe there you go, I can't go there. We could buy an eyedropper and pool our money. He's definitely into promotion though, and I get a kick out of it. I mean, this guy, 6'2", 6'3", and he kind of plays up, a certain stereotype, and that, I've seen him laying kind of like a cheesecake shot. He's laying down, smiling with his head resting in the palm of his hand, wearing Austrian lederhosen. I mean, he looks like he's like second runner-up in the Baron von Trapp lookalike contest. I think he's well aware of that. And he's got a sense of humor. Now, you remember at Beyonce, you might have seen the Wild Boar, the original would have been cast for the Medici family in Renaissance Italy. There's another takeoff on the Wild Boar there too. It looks like with maybe a Raiders downtown. Not sure what. Which might mean that I need to change my prescription. Sorry about this traffic. It's a fairly tall red, but let me tell you a little bit about that in case you come back here on your own. Small red will grow in a state park near Calistoga, both BOTHE-Amplified State Park. It's actually the case that the grove is in a gulch, maybe about a mile off of the valley itself. Redwoods need a lot of moisture. The ones in your woods are looking at 20 to 30 bathtubs of water in their total biomass from roots to tip. And that in order to be as healthy as they can be. There are wind gaps between some of the mountains. I mean, we crossed, and we're going to cross again, the most famous wind gap in California. It's a generic term, and that is the Golden Gate Strait. But there are ways of the fog, in some cases, to wind its way well into the interior. Those particular redwoods which benefit from that fog. And when I talk about smudge pots here, they're just as a decoration. You know, a blast up past old-fashioned smudge pots on the road. Looks like a, premature vineyard, maybe 30-year-old vines. It's going to be, it looks like it's bilateral trellis of two crates. And then you got your quad trellis and organic signage on the left, California certified. If you don't have an organic field, it's about 3 years.
I can imagine like
To designate the hand on the
taking over last.
I wish we could do a dine and dash at the French Laundry, but that's going to work. Town of Yountville, I just mentioned in passing, should be mentioned. Actually, in terms of visitors to California's wine countries from and America's wine countries, the country taken as a whole, there is no denser cluster of gourmet quality restaurants than you would find in the town of 4,000 people, much smaller than the city of the French Laundry, Michelin rated with 3 stars now for year after year after year. The Thomas Keller restaurant, he owns a bunch of different places, has developed a bunch of different places. The newest, Calenda, which is Oaxacan cuisine, Oaxaca state of Mexico. Bouchon Brasserie, which is rather casual, but nevertheless has a Michelin star. Bouchon Bakery, down home American cuisine. Addendum and Ad Hoc, those are both toy restaurants, but there's so much in Yountville. There's rivals there. TV celebrity chef Michael Ciarelli. Country Italian food, California organics, Ultimo, Bottega, and a new hamburger joint developed by Ciarella. In the more thoroughly French department, Philippe Chanty's Bistro Chanty, bone dry white Merceaus, that appellation of Burgundy and France paired with West Coast shellfish. Hearty Napa breads with the traditional, cocoa bean stuff. This is just all backed up from the variety of traffic lights. It's not yet. Architecture of the Mondavi Winery is meant to suggest one of the Franciscan-era missions. And we're going slow enough, you might be able to appreciate the view into a part of famous Tacaron vineyard through that arch. It's way wider than the Franciscan mission arch. There it is. There's a very minimalist grizzly bear from the work of the Benjamin modernist bust of Robert Mugabe himself. Granddaddy or grandmama of the gourmet quality delicatessens, I'll progress from that. population next to where it's kind of a sign because of the size, some of the excessive bacteria, collapsing bridge. Over below that's, again, one of those four real great areas for building grapes. It's actually my favorite application for it because what they're pulling out of soil into the grapes is they're managing to get more notes of florality out of than any of the other 5 categories of applications. It's not the only name of the game, but floral profile, rose, lilac, that sort of thing. You normally don't associate those with Cabernet Sauvignon at all. It's more what you might associate with white Viognier, Rhone variety. Mileage on the road, so not that far from San Francisco. That's why some folks thought, build bedrooms of it. mention Napa Valley Distillery signage. They have a license, the one at Oxbow, but at Oxbow they have a license to pour fruit-based spirits. That's all.
But like, it did really butterfly up the street.
And then they'll make whiskeys.
Yeah,
it's possible to do that. Go and taste spirits legally. These sorts of things in the 90s. Nightmare scenario of group of attorneys chartered guide and driver. We went up to was owned by Remy Martin, and they were going up thinking they were going to go and taste brandy. Nobody had told me, I didn't know myself, that it really wasn't legally possible to taste brandy. You can buy it. You can take a tour of this particular facility. You can even look at a glass of brandy, pour it into a snifter, about an ounce or so. You could hold it up to your nose and admire the aroma, but then you had to put it down. You talk about taking a shower with the rain coming down. They were not. It really didn't work out too well for that entity. Napa closed. But, eventually the laws changed, and that was probably one reason why. Make an example. And now, if you do have a few days in the Bay Area, and use a little bit of mass transit, and that, you can get over to Alameda Island, and the mass transit you can use the ferry boat. Alameda Island to shuttle to St. George's Spirits. Spirits too.
Yeah, you were just having the best time. Like, you had that.
They pour, they legally, they're supposed to pour you an ounce or 4 times of wine. It's imported although towards the end of the day, you may have found this, that Sutter.
It was French, but it was like...
It's sometimes almost like the folks do in pouring. Come out of an exercise class and the red waiter. You just can't pull that bottle up from your glass fast enough for it to be only one ounce. It can be frustrating to try to do a tasting on your own and pay the tasting fees, which are just skyrocketing. I'm not talking $600 a glass, but $40, $50 for maybe 4 1-ounce pours. Many of these places, I come up here periodically with my wife. We have a little strategy we'll say to the staff, well, we're just going to share one pour. And we do. We pay for that. But in the course of sharing it, we talk up the people who are pouring it. We're real nice to them. We establish enough of a bond. They're giving us maybe 2 or 3 ounces instead of 1 ounce. That's the strategy. I mean, I can't guarantee it's going to work, but most of the time it works in the afternoon. Little spiel on redwoods and why it is significant that there's itty-bitty old growth grove in both Napa and the state park. The idea is they are growing in the hottest climate of anywhere in the world where old growth coastal redwoods are grown. So they're much studied by tree botanists. They're considered to be kind of vine canary. There's an idea as to how these trees will do as the climate warms up. So far, and it's not only the case for this particular little redwood park, but so far they are growing faster than they used to grow in the warmer climate, which is not really a surprise.
a lot of people because they are relics from the ages of the dinosaurs that were in fossil 160 million years. They're open warmer, climatological periods. You know, they'll probably be okay as long as they get enough water. I mean, if we have some years of drought, but then some years maybe of a hot and wet climate, and so far we've had that really in California, they should be fine. It's just dry for 10, 20 years, something like that. That's a different story. You know, you may say, well, isn't it a drought every year in California? It depends on, you know, what you're going to define as a drought. If you want to say that a dry season is the same thing as a drought, well, yeah, every year since California has been settled, it goes back millenniums has been a drought. But if you're going to measure it as average annual rainfall throughout the course of a year, say around 35 inches, rule of thumb, that'll be for here or also in San Francisco. You know, this year it looks like we're going to have less, well less than 35 inches, but the last 3 previous years we've had well over the average annual rainfall, and then there were 4 years of under average annual rainfall before that. It's really not too bad in that department, but now that raises a question, which is, well, come on, if that's the case, what's with all these fires? Well, in the summer, in the dry seasons, it has been drier than in past dry seasons. And if you have a wetter, rainy season, and you have a greater amount of underbrush growth, which then dries out inordinately, and then if maybe you have an irresponsible power, now really editorialized, what many people in California would say, and this is, let's say, an issue in the state, is the power company, Pacific Gas and Electric, doing their job, maintaining their equipment. Or when we have had summer inordinate high winds blowing over power lines, is that just an act of God, or is that negligence on the part of Pacific Gas and Electric? You know, you get a spark and all that extra dry tinder, and poof, you're in trouble. That's what's been going on. up a little bit and the volume of the blower is down. If you think that's too hot, let me know.
Give me your phone. I'm literally trying to
Well, maybe you got a few vents open around your seat, not necessarily, but
yeah, that sounded really great.
back into Carneros. And we will pass by the Madonna Estate and Piazza again. There was a time when the man who is California's governor was a partner in the Moonfly Cafe on the right, and this Carneros resort will be Gavin Newsom. But he's either a silent partner in a number of businesses or has divested himself from those businesses so that there's no conflict of interest. If you get what I'm trying to say. There's Madonna.
Happy birthday, Miranda.
Yeah, the actual vineyard, Madonna Vineyard, it's a wonderful area. At the time, I'd love to take you into the section of Carneros all the way out to where the vines meet the coastal uplands of marshlands. Wonderful, wonderful shirt. The Dunham Estate, D-O-N-U-M. Woman, German-American woman, Lola Rock, R-A-C-K, now. She sold the Buena Vista winery, which is near the town of Sonoma, to Jean-Charles Boisset a number of years ago. You can taste Dunham wines down at that winery collective. One of the outfits collectively leases the space in the cannery shopping mall that's between Leavenworth and Hyde and Beach and Jefferson. I tell my art ticketing. Later on I'll figure out if we have to go down there to drop it off or not. There's a winery worth mentioning. Over on the right, it's a kind of an interesting winery, half sparkling and half still, and on a large scale, where you see the smoked glass structure on the right. That's just for their functioning tasting rooms. The whole hill is hollowed out for the Artesa winery. A lot of Spanish money went into that. The Spanish House of Cordonou, it used to be called, Copamaker, it used to be called Cordonou Napa. A lot of competition though in the realm of sparkling wine, and the market is smaller than for still white and red, although that's changing in terms of, real upscale stuff, not, not going to mention any brand names. Well, I have one brand name I don't mind mentioning, like Andre or something like that, which has been on, you know, Hanukkah, Christmas, and holiday advertisements since I was a little kid. The type of stuff my parents would buy and let me have a sip of, if there was any reason to have a sip of it. They kind of folded for a while, and they reinvented themselves. They're a very well-respected, still Pinot Noir maker now. They still make a lot of sweat. So if I was going to laundry list them, and then I would say, when you saw signage for Mum Napa Valley, to the best of my knowledge, that's American-owned. It was just a vineyard, sparkling wine maker. Let's say Mum, Artesa, Domaine Chandon, Domaine Carneros, Gloria Ferrer over in Sonoma is another big one. Schramsberg, Jacob Schramm, 19th century sparkling wine maker. You know, even Corbel, which is, there is a Corbel I like. They make you could almost call it a super dry brut, a natural. It's really a dry sparkling wine. And then even a brut is going to have, there's a mountain lion on your right. Oh, actually, that wasn't, it looked like it was a coyote. I thought it was a large cat there for a second. But then it had the, you know, the canine nose. It was a coyote. Let me shift to that topic, okay? You want to see wild animals while you're here, okay? Development just over the last few years, Telegraph Hill. There is a small colony of coyotes now up by Coit Tower on Telegraph Hill. I mean, very smart animal. They would have had to navigate their way in the middle of the night through Chinatown and North Beach, most densely populated parts of San Francisco, to get there. I mean, we've had coyotes in our parks now for years, so were you to live on Telegraph Hill, you don't let your dog run loose at night. It'd be difficult to walk around up there with a little dog. Okay. All the way or not? That's fine. And it's okay, the left one we want up. Is that okay? All right, let's talk about some, a victim from the 2017 fire. Okay, if you look behind you on the right, there's a winery we'll go to sometimes. It's called Nicholson Ranch. It's good for Pinot and Chardonnay. The winery was saved in 2017. First responders had to let other things around it burn, including the Stornetta Dairy branch. There was a branch of a very large California dairy just over here on the right. Space was being leased out by kind of the grandmama of the gourmet quality goat and sheep's milk department of California. You might have heard of her, Laura Chanel, C-H-E-N-E-L. No relationship with the perfume lady, Coco Chanel at all. Different spelling of the name. A Sonoma girl, grew up and lived for about a half a decade in France, and learned how to do a good job making goat and sheep's milk cheese. You go to your, supermarkets and smaller stores, your Whole Foods and whatnot, and you'll still see her brand name. Good goat and sheep's milk cheese. She's okay in that Stornetta just gave her another place to lease. They're big. And then here's a nice look at the Sonoma Valley on the right. San Pablo Bay on the left, and still a long ways to go. An area that is prone to flooding and tour around. competition.
I think in the former line of islands,
It's like speaking the things I never said.
You can see some netting among the trellising there on the right if you look underneath the cords. You know, that's the best way of preventing the birdies from eating the grapes.
Like, you know, you guys do like the.
It's also the most expensive way of doing it.
What is the tickets?
Other things you might do would be to have a variety of different, you know, visual props to scare the birds in your vineyards, and that might confuse them for a day or that. So what they tend to use at Vianza, unless they've changed them, are recorded cannon shots. I mean, you have to figure, you know, I mean, you're, can you afford to lose 5% of your crop or not? I mean, the netting can cost so much that you might be better off just losing 5% of your grapes than paying for the netting and the app. First, you've got to put the netting on. Then you've got to raise it over the vines when the grapes are nice and ripe. Then you've got to get it off of the vines in order to harvest the bunches. It costs a lot. And you want to throw machine harvesting. I mean, you wouldn't even do machine harvesting with that. You could wreck the netting with doing hand harvesting. You know, in terms of, I mean, you'll hear some guides and some people say, oh, everything is hand harvested up here. Then other people are saying it's a total scandal. They do everything by machine. The truth, as it is often the case, is somewhere in the middle, okay? It's nice, I mean, if you really want to learn more about that, come back during the time of the crush. And what I get a kick out of in some of the communities where the folks who do the hard work, and by the way, I mean, if you're going to do farm work, if I was going to do farm work, I would want to do grape bunch harvesting. You can make, if you know what you're doing, and the problem is I wouldn't know what I was doing, you can make $50 an hour. And that this is a short season, though. It's just maybe, if you're lucky, it's 2 months. And that, so then if you're up here from Mexico and that or something, or you're staying here year round, you're doing other things which are not as lucrative in the way of farm work, and it's all farm work. But I mean, imagine you go into a convenience store and standing in line, and it's kind of taking its time, and you're eyeballing looking at the National Enquirer and snickering a little bit. People magazine is there, and then, you know, there's the big kind of ugly plastic container. It might be loaded with red licorice, or it might be loaded with beef jerky, and you're thinking, I wonder how that beef jerky tastes. I've never had that before. Imagine you're in Calistoga in this long line, and instead you have a big clear plastic tub right at the checkout full of sickles, tiny little sickles with a sharp blade about 3 inches long, and they cost, maybe about $2-3 a piece. And I mean, if you're out there and you're being paid by the piece, you don't have the time to sharpen a dull sickle. You just go on to the next one. So you may see people buying a half a dozen of these if they're going to get out here and hack off the bunches of grapes. Well, let's say 30 to 100 grapes per bunch is what will be on them. I saw a video. I was amazed when I saw it. It was about harvesting in Burgundy, and apparently a lot of friends of families, college students and other folks, just extended families of grape farmers of generations and generations will actually use snips, metal snips, at least in some cases. I swear it was in a video. I've never seen anything like it. Individually snip the grapes off of the bunches. I mean, man, that is labor intensive. That better be volunteer work of some type. What they have, and I'm thinking, I don't know if they showed you a destemmer crusher in Vianza. They usually don't take you far in enough for you to see the fermentation tank and some of the other equipment. At Madonna, both of those places, certainly at Sutter Home, they have those things. But imagine, your jet turbine. But imagine it's kind of a wacky jet turbine. And there are 2 metal cylinders, an outer one and an inner one. And you look into that inner cylinder, and it looks like there's, kind of misshapen blades. And that often it's a helix, but not always. Sometimes they're just different shapes. You're going to have a conveyor or an auger which is going to bring the bunches of grapes out of, a big tub. The bins will go into a big tub, and they'll even have winches over such tubs and special gondola tractor trailers where they'll tip the whole gondola with tons of grapes in it into a huge tub, and then an auger will take the grapes up to the destemmer. And then they're going to go into the destemmer, and then the paddles will force the grapes off of the end of the vine.